Good morning from Brisbane, and welcome to all the world around who have joined us today for our virtual Innovate for Water in Brisbane 2020. My name is Katrina Donaghy and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Civic Ledger, and this is in the city to which I live, and I'm going to introduce straight over to Mark Pascoe, who is the Director of the International Water Centre here in Brisbane. Welcome, Mark. Over to you.
Thanks, Katrina, and welcome everybody, both here and virtually. Another one of our strange times in these strange times. Why are we here? International Water Centre has partnered with waterpreneurs, with the Queensland Government via the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur and Trade and Investment Queensland, with GHD, BHP, the City of Gold Coast, significantly, the organisation Waterpreneurs. So good morning, Nicholas in Geneva. We've worked with Waterpreneurs for the last, must be more than a year, maybe almost 2 years, of bringing this concept of an Innovate for Water event here to Brisbane. But not just Brisbane, to this region, to Southeast Asia and the Pacific, or Asia and the Pacific. What our motivation has been in International Water Centre is indeed another leg to our strategy, which has been driven out of this notion of financing. How are we going to finance the Sustainable Development Goals? This little pin on my lapel here, the SDGs, in particular SDG 6. How are we going to finance that? We're going to have to finance it, at least in part, through innovation. This event is about gathering, and it's a pretty full event, guys. This event is about gathering a whole lot of people with good ideas, like Katrina, and Bioflow, and various organisations who are going to come and tell us about their really good ideas. We're also going to hear from people who have challenges. And one of our key partners is the Australian Water Partnership, and in particular the Australian Aid Program and the Water for Women program. These banners around the room here that are describing the challenges in our region. 700 million people don't have a toilet in this region, and that's Asia and the Pacific. So that's one of our huge challenges. Women and girls are some of the most challenged in this space. So I'm looking forward to hearing all of your ideas. I don't want to get too much in the way of us hearing your ideas, but I do want to hear our welcomes from our hosts here at the precinct. We're in the precinct in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. In fact, I worked in this building about 30 years ago, but that's another story. My next delightful chore is to introduce Fred Hooper. Fred's going to give us an acknowledgement of country. He's a Murrawari man from the Murrawari Nation, situated between Bakara and the Warrego rivers, which straddles what is now known as Queensland-New South Wales borders in the western part of New South Wales and southwest Queensland. He joined the Australian Navy in 1979 at the age of 17, served 6 years on ships and submarines. He left the Navy and worked in the Commonwealth Public Service from 1985. He was responsible for the Murrawari Nation declaring their continued independence from the Crown of Great Britain. He's the chair of the Murrawari People's Council and the Northern Basin Aboriginal Nations, which represents 22 sovereign First Nations of the Northern Murray-Darling Basin. For those of you who are not in Australia, this is our largest river system. And in Brisbane here, we're pretty near the top of that basin. But Fred's from in the middle of the top of that basin, if you like. and he's worked tirelessly over the last 10 years to secure water rights for the First Nations and their peoples in the Northern Murray-Darling Basin. Fred, I'd love you to take the baton and give us an acknowledgement of country. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fred Hooper, and I'm a Murrawari man, as you just heard. Before I go into the acknowledgement of country, water is a precious resource, not only in the Murray-Darling Basin, but right across the world. And water scarcity is becoming more prevalent around the world, and in particular where I work and where I advocate within the Murray-Darling Basin. I want to just tell a quick story before I do the acknowledgement. In January last year, I was heading home. I currently live in a little place called Tamworth, or a city called Tamworth, which is northern New South Wales. I was heading out to a little place called Wollamaringal, where I come from. And we're driving along the road, and I pulled up on the side of the road, and, you know, middle of summer, middle of drought, I managed to get a feed on the side of the road. And we have a little fruit. It's like a passion fruit called the Burrigan. And then I was in Canberra, and I was at a meeting in Canberra, and we're talking with a committee that was set up by the Minister for Agriculture, Minister Littleproud, when he was the minister. And they were talking about the drought. And my question was, which drought were they talking about? Are they talking about the European drought, or are they talking about an Aboriginal drought? So I term the phrase a European drought because all of the introduced species that rely on water were dead. They weren't able to irrigate their cotton. They weren't able to grow the wheats and all of that. Yet First Nations native food was growing in abundance across the landscape. So, and I'm just wondering why in the Northern Basin we're not looking at those types of industries that could be developed and could contribute to water saving, not only here in the Murray-Darling Basin, but right across the country and possibly in other places around the world. So in saying that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to acknowledge all of the sovereign First Nations of Australia and the Murray-Darling Basin, in particular the nations of the Northern Basin, which I am the chair of the Northern Basin Aboriginal Nations, which is an administrative arm of the Union of Sovereign First Nations of the Northern Basin, under the Northern Basin Treaty of Unity, which was signed a couple of years ago at the Aboriginal Embassy site in Canberra in front of the old Parliament House. But more importantly, I'd like to also acknowledge all of the First Nations people that are around the world. We all sit on First Nations country, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in America, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in England. Originally, there were First Nations on that land and the first peoples of that land. So I'd like to acknowledge all those as well. I'd like to, at this stage, send prayers and good wishes to all those people in Melbourne, which are in stage 4 lockdown due to the COVID situation and crisis that's impacting the world as well. So, but I'd also like to acknowledge all of the First Nations elders, past and present. And I'd also like to acknowledge the work that they've done in the past in advocating for First Nations right, particularly in the United Nations. And I'd like to also acknowledge and encourage the elders of the future to lead with honour, respect and dignity for all, not just the people that they talk to, the people that they like, but everybody. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to this virtual world of COVID and the new way of doing business, and hope we have a wonderful 3 days. I'm going to be back tomorrow to do a welcome as well, and on Friday, but also presenting on behalf of the Northern Basin Aboriginal Nations on Thursday night as well, or Thursday afternoon. So welcome everybody to this, Water or Innovate for Water Brisbane Conference 2020, and I hope you have a wonderful couple of days, and that from this some really good innovations can be funded and can be rolled out across the world. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, Fred, so much for that acknowledgement. It means a lot to us. Really grateful. Thank you. And I also have very fond memories of Tamworth. I lived in Armidale for about 9 years. It's such a beautiful part of the world. And I would also like to add our recognition and our respects for the traditional owners of the lands that we're all on, particularly where we are here now, the Jagera and the Turrbal people here at the precinct in Fortitude Valley in beautiful, beautiful Brisbane, and all the virtual lands that we are working across today and tomorrow and the next day, I believe. So really would like to echo Fred's words. We're broadcasting to you today here from Queensland's flagship innovation centre, the Precinct. It's a beautiful place. I'm so sorry you can't be here. We're really looking forward to welcoming you here when you are able to. It's a place for meeting opportunity, a place for meeting connections, a place for solving challenges. So it's a great place for us to be broadcasting this event from. And it's my real pleasure to open today's proceedings on behalf of the Minister, our Minister Kate Jones, who's the Minister for State Development, Tourism and Innovation. She unfortunately can't be with us today. We live in unprecedented, unbelievable times, and as you can imagine, our government's hours here in Australia, here in Queensland, around the world are so flat out trying to help us navigate our way through these disruptive times. I'd also like to add an acknowledgement and a real heart for our friends and families in Victoria, and we thank you for the sacrifices that you are making for us right now, where we're standing there with you, so thank you so much for that. I'd also like to recognise, as we have in the posters behind us, that here in Australia, and particularly Queensland, we are unbelievably fortunate. I think about the men, women and children across the world who do not have access to water. This issue that you are going to be working on has been an issue for so many years. I think, and you would know the statistics much better than me, but I do remember once upon a time reading the UN saying that by 2030, 6 billion people around the world will not have access to clean water. This is a huge issue, and I am so thrilled that you from all around the world are tackling this issue here over the next few days. We live in incredibly disruptive times, disruptions to our supply chains, disruptions to the way we work, the way we live, the thought of who we are as humans. They are very disruptive, and I recognise that has challenges then for the water industry. But I also want to encourage you, because in times of disruption, that is when we have had our biggest and our best innovations. That's when we have driven the best changes, had the most bright ideas to make a difference, and it's when we have the energy and the impetus to do something about it. We live in a time when the culture has changed. It's a culture of change. It's a culture of trying to make a difference, of trying to solve these challenges. So you are in a sweet spot right now in terms of the work that you are trying to do as fabulous waterpreneurs. This forum will create a really fantastic frontier for you to make these solutions, to come up with these solutions. Just hang on a tick, I have just lost my, and I want to make sure I don't forget some of the wonderful things that Craig wrote out for me. And I've done it again, just bear with me. Here we go. So it's a fabulous opportunity for you all across Australia and the world to be coming up with these solutions. And the really brilliant thing that you're doing is bringing together a whole range of different people. The way we will solve these challenges is to think differently. And to do that, you need to bring creative people from diverse ranges of sectors, ideas, and cultures to do that. So congratulations for what you're doing. Our vision in Queensland is to have a water industry that is collaborative, that supports increased productivity, economic growth, strong, healthy communities, and obviously overall is good for our environment. So with that, I'm really pleased the forum is concentrating on a challenge, on challenges, on innovation, on solutions, on impact, activity and action now, that it's diversity, you're looking at natural disasters, climate change, ageing infrastructure, capital and different forms of capital, or even the rising energy demands. It's a complex system that you're looking at. I want to thank you for what you're doing, and I wish you a fantastic time at the forum. Look forward to hearing the solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Now I have the amazing pleasure of introducing Leanne Kemp. Leanne is the CEO and founder of Everledger, which is a blockchain company that solves the problems of luxury goods and various other things. But she's also our Queensland entrepreneur, and I'm very proud to say she's also a dear friend. So welcome, Leanne. Welcome to Innovate for Water. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really important words that were just echoed by our previous speakers. And delivering clean water and ensuring proper wastewater management has been a global concern since 1970. That's 50 years in the making, and we're still here today tackling these problems. Significant progress towards this objective was made during 1980. And I'm giving you a little bit of history and casting back to be able to actually see and understand the importance around the action that should come out of today's event. The significant approach towards this objective was made in the 1980s, certainly when the United Nations declared that the international drinking water supply and sanitisation decade was made in the 80s. But the ultimate goal to ensure that every human on the planet had access to clean water and sanitisation by 1990 was not achieved. And the world tried again in 2000 with less ambitious Millennial Development Goal, the MDG, the target of halving the share of the population without sustainable access to clean water and sanitisation by 2015. And this time, the United Nations declared victory, but included anyone with access of water to all, clean or not. Was it a cheat? Perhaps. The Sustainable Development Goals then, of course, the SDGs, not the MDGs, were adopted by the United Nations members in 2015 and were supposed to pick up where the MDGs left off. Again, the target is clean water and proper sanitisation for all. The deadline this time is 2030, and the clock is ticking. But as in the past, the barriers to success are formidable. When the SDGs were introduced, the United Nations estimated 785 million people worldwide lacked access to even drinking water as a service. The true number is possibly far larger than this. And in fact, we have this same problem right here, 3 hours drive from Brisbane, in a town called Biggenden. I was there only a fortnight ago. The ABC just wrote a written article about this, and it is a concern of the town. This issue is not something that you will see in African nations or in South America. This is here in our own backyard. When the SDGs were introduced, the true number, according to UNICEF and the World Health Organization, is something like 2.2 billion people, and they do not have safely managed drinking water, and 4.2 billion do not have safely managed sanitisation services. Contaminated water and poor sanitisation are linked to the transmission of disease, and no truer is that concern today with COVID. Now, COVID-19, the pandemic, is likely to transform our behaviours and attitudes and policies in very many areas. And for the sake of overcoming the public health crisis and enabling an economic recovery, one must hope that water and wastewater management will be among them. Now, not surprisingly, there have been incidences globally that have eroded trust in water utilities. And today, at least 3.5 billion people worldwide in both developed and developing countries lack confidence in the quality of water. In the midst of COVID-19, it's alarming. This could be a turning point. Universal access to clean water and sanitisation has been the world's radar since 1970, 50 years. Surely we can get it right. But the current pandemic has made it now, hopefully, a universal aligned interest. Some cities have been recognised and properly treating their wastewater, which can be channeled towards human, industrial, agricultural and environmental uses. In the Netherlands, we cast a little bit further out than Australia, there are traces of COVID-19 coronavirus that were detected in untreated water sources 6 days before the first case was reported. Same too in Zurich, in the Swiss city of Leanne, and we are not safe here in Australia either. Australia also reported that it detected the virus in untreated wastewater and now plans to carry out routine testing to anticipate outbreaks. Tokyo, of course, has also made similar declarations. In a time when we're concerned for our mental health and our physical health, it seems likely that COVID-19 crisis will increase the demand for cleaner, safer water and more reliable and effective wastewater treatment everywhere. Now, this could accelerate the progress towards the SDGs on water and waste. But success is far from guaranteed, and not at least because the pandemic has also seemed to strengthen other trends. Declining trust in some public institutions, certainly not the Queensland government. Changing this will definitely require events like this, entrepreneurs like you, water utilities all over the world to improve their management, communication and practices significantly. So I thank you for your deliberate commitment to change.
Thank you, Leanne, for that amazing. I think I gave you the challenge if you could do 5 decades in 7 minutes, and she did. Well done. Now I'd like to bring on our next guest. We have Kirsty joining us. So if we want to bring Kirsty into the room, into the actual main stage, I think the limousine is picking you up and bringing you to the stage. So over to you, Kirsty. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be speaking at this exciting and timely event. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming from today, Canberra, the Ngunnawal people. I extend that recognition to the traditional custodians of the lands on which you're all gathered today, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today's event and the rest of the days. Australia has a unique water challenge. As the world's driest inhabited continent, with low average rainfall and high rainfall variability, we experience many challenges in managing our scarce water resources. These issues are further exacerbated by increased climate variability and a rising demand for water. In the face of these challenges, Australia continues to strive to achieve economic, social, and environmental sustainability. This has led to world-leading approaches in water management, including strong governance structures, behavioural adaptation, and technological innovation in our water policy and practices. Innovation towards more sustainable and water-secure futures are fostered in the water industry, within private companies, expert circles, communities, and all levels of government. And implementing them requires coherent water policies and strong coalitions across multi-level governance systems. Australia has for 30 years been progressing a national program of water reform to better manage this critical resource. At the heart of this reform has been the treatment of water resources as economic and social goods, culminating in the assignment of a clear economic and market value to the consumptive component of the water resource. This has enhanced the security and commercial certainty of water entitlements for the benefit of industry, communities, and the environment. This philosophy underpins Australia's key water policy framework, the National Water Initiative. The Intergovernmental Agreement on the National Water Initiative, NWI, was agreed on by Australia's federal, state and territory governments back in 2004 and is Australia's blueprint for water reform. It provides a comprehensive overarching framework for a principle-based approach to government actions in developing and implementing these reforms. This umbrella approach allows each state and territory to implement the principles in a way that meets the specific requirements of each jurisdiction. The productivity, which is the body responsible for providing the Australian Government with independent research and advice on a range of economic, social and environmental issues, is currently undertaking its triennial assessment of progress in achieving the objectives and outcomes of the NWI. In 2017, it found that while the NWI was still relevant and considerable progress had been made in implementing the principles and actions within it, there remained further work to do to complete unfinished business. Beyond that, the NWI needed to be renewed to manage the rising challenges posed by climate change, changing demographics, and changing community expectations. The 2017 inquiry recommended that jurisdictions commit to a renewed NWI that included revising policy settings such as improving water planning to take account of climate change, fully implementing entitlement and planning reforms, and better recognising the water needs of Indigenous Australians. The inquiry also highlighted the importance of urban water management, environmental water management, and decision-making when building or supporting new infrastructure, and recommended enhancing policy settings relating to these issues as well. The Australian Government welcomed these findings, and on the 5th of April 2019, the then Commonwealth Minister for Agriculture and Water Resources announced the Australian Government's commitment to a renewed NWI. This announcement began the renewal process, and the Australian Government is now working with state and territory governments to address these important matters. A renewed NWI will position Australia to effectively address future challenges and ensure sustainability through an adaptive learning approach to the design and delivery of policies and programs. The Commission's 2020 inquiry has come at an opportune moment to test the NWI's capacity to guide water managers in quickly and resiliently responding to threats to Australia's water security. Extreme events such as repeated severe droughts, bushfires, COVID-19, and emerging threats not necessarily considered significant back in 2004 highlight potential threats to Australia's water security in different ways. Droughts have tested the capacity of the system to supply a quantity of water. Bushfires can substantially impact the quality of water, and COVID-19 tests the capacity of a workforce to maintain the delivery of water. And in addition, water supply cybersecurity has become an increasing focus. While the water sector has proven itself to be robust and adaptable, there is a need to revisit some of the principles that make up the NWI in this context. Currently, the NWI is focused mostly on the sustainable supply of rural water, which is understandable as this represents 3/4 of the water use in Australia. Its management is most likely to impact on the sustainable supply of water, and it represents the greatest opportunity for maximising value from that available water. The NWI, with its focus on sustainable water quantity and the trade of water from one user to another, is generally well suited to the management of water supplies during drought. However, there is an opportunity for us to further consider water quality and urban water and the resilience and robustness of our systems in the face of workforce and digital management issues, particularly in our smaller centres. Parallel to extreme shock events, Australia's changing climate will, over the medium term and longer term, become a significant challenge in managing our water resources. Shifting rainfall patterns contribute to floods and lengthy droughts. The Australian Government recognises the long-term impact of climate change on our water resources and the challenge it presents around water planning and management across Australia. In order to address these issues, the Australian Government will lead jurisdictions in the addition of climate change principles into the renewed NWI 2021 to guide a robust and consistent national approach to water management and planning. The Australian Government is well placed to lead this, having the expert advice of organisations such as the Bureau of Meteorology and the CSIRO to provide science-based evidence needed to tackle the climate change challenge. The Australian Government is committed to innovative approaches to sustainability, efficiency and productivity in the management and use of our limited water resources. Water innovation can apply not only to new sustainable technologies, but also to new partnerships, extending across public administration, research and industry. New business models and new forms of water governance that are not only innovative themselves, but can also stimulate and support technological innovations. Forums such as this one that bring together stakeholders and innovators are fantastic for ensuring we take full advantage of the vast water expertise Australia has at its fingertips. Now more than ever, collaboration is needed. So I'd like to thank the International WaterCentre for organising this event and look forward to hearing the presentations from other participants. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Kirsty.